Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is known that the sickness of the upper respiratory system is most seriously in Tulu compared to other towns and cities in Sarawak. Ever since the development of the petrochemical complexes at Tanjung Kidurong, Bintulu air quality has changed. And now with the government's intention of developing Tanjung Kidurong into a petrochemical hub, we have to be even more careful on how we are going to manage and protect our environment. We have to make sure that the safety and health of people in Bintulu will never be compromised. Now, each day, folks of Bintulu in the vicinity of Kidurong smell the cooking of the palm oil from nearby palm oil refineries. It may not be a bad smell to some, but it is annoying. It makes you feel hungry but never full, never kinyan. Then you have the ammonia smell from the ASEAN Bintulu fertilizer ABF plant, and of course other odorless gas from the huge MLNG plants there as well. Now today with the Huchen Fine Chemical Corporation from Korea, which aims to produce ammonia, nitric acid and ammonium nitrate, now under construction at Tanjung Kidurong, there will be added ammonia in the air, and folks in Bintulu like to know how is this not going to affect their health. People are concerned. Now, apart from the proposed product from the Huchen plant, whether the company has any plan in their pipeline or the second phase of the project to produce other products, and if so, what are they? More specifically, Mr. Speaker, whether cyanide will be produced there. Mr. Speaker, another concern of the petrochemical complexes at Tanjung Kidurong, Bintulu is the close proximity of how all these plants are built together. The ABF, Huchen, Shell, LPG, SNDS, the Shell middle distillate synthesis, and the 9 MLNG trains. Some said it is a sitting time bomb. The land on which all these plants are built is small, and the plants are literally built back to back with one another, quite unlike the Samalaju Industrial Park, which are more spaced out. I'm sure that there is at least a safety buffer zone, both for the security and safety reasons between these plants. And I wonder if there is, I wonder if this has been complied with. And if so, what are they? How come these plants are built so close? As any accident could have so easily triggered a chain reaction to the whole of this complex at Tanjung Kidurong, the people, shops, factories nearby. Another area of great concern is the Samalaju, of great environmental concern is the Samalaju Industrial Park. Although at the moment only a few of the plants have been set up, but these plants are huge. I mean really huge. And the emission from the exhaust of these plants is not something that we Sarawakians see every day. I'm very concerned, although I know that the NREB, the Natural Resource and Environmental Board, is working very hard on this. But I really believe that in view of the scope of the pollution at Samalaju Industrial Park and for the protection of our Sarawak environment, also at Tanjung Kidurong also, we need to do more detail in our environmental control and protection, our air, our water and land. We may even need to have an independent environmental body to monitor and audit the whole thing. Mr. Speaker, I hope that we can grab this opportunity when the industries are just beginning to set up, that a proper system with specific programs in terms of sufficient personnel, equipment, expertise, etc., for critical environmental control by our NRB to be in place to cope with the future industrial development so that our environment is always protected and that no abuse of our environment could happen. Mr. Speaker, because of the geographical size of Sarawak, where land transport is so backwards and air travel in Sarawak is a necessity, not a luxury. Unfortunately, air travel in Sarawak by mass has turned from worst to worst in the past 2 decades. We used to have both jets and propeller-propelled planes flying and serving many parts of the town throughout Sarawak. Flights were many and fares were reasonably, but that's all history now. Presently, we have the mast, the wings, but we must do better. I can understand that we use propeller-propelled aircraft for short-distance travel, but the airfare of which must be cheaper cannot be the same as that of a jet plane, which is actually what we are being charged now. Bintulu Cebu return is more than 300 ringgit. Bintulu Kuching return is 500 ringgit. Who can pay that kind of a price for a trip? For many, salary is only 1,000 or 2,000 ringgit a month. The price, that kind of price, is not for ordinary Sarawakians who need to travel to other parts of Sarawak out of necessity. That kind of pricing is corporate pricing. That's not right, Mr. Speaker, for our ordinary folks to be slapped to such expensive prices when there are no other alternatives that we can turn to. The price must be cheaper. Moreover, if you're handicapped or sick and needed a wheelchair, you cannot fly the Mars Wing. They don't have such facilities. Also, since it is a smaller aircraft, there should be more flights made available for the convenience of our folks also. But flight frequency is so poor, so few flights to Cebu, Miri, and Kuching, and I say that since it is a smaller aircraft, they should fly more often and offer more choice schedules to the people. When Mars Wing started out a few years ago, she proudly boasted of 88 ringgit one way. Now, where is that price now? If she could do it then, how come not do it now? The irony of the whole thing is that Sarawak is contributing so much to the federal coffer from our oil and gas, and Bintulu being the center of all this action, yet our domestic air travel is so deplorable. Mr. Speaker, so many times I have brought up in this day one of the woes of folks traveling along the Kidurong road. Traffic jam was just so bad each day, but now I'm glad that this has finally eased off with the completion of the road from Taman Matahari to Bintulu Port. Shabash to BDA, shabash to the BN government in this case. But there is another road which is equally jammed, and that is the Jalan Tun Hussein on road. The road jam condition I have mentioned many times in this day one. Every day during peak hours, car pile-ups snarling along, tailing one another. What is so bad is that there is not even an alternate route which one can use. The situation can be worse at the rate the new number of cars are getting onto the road. Many predicted that in 2 years' time, if nothing is done, the jam can render the vehicle there during peak hours slower than a snail pace. And that's why it is important that the problem must be dealt with and solved quickly. Additional lanes are needed, and flyovers at Beranjaya junctions may be some of the basics facilities which need to be in place. Therefore, I urge the government to empathize with the folks there and look into this seriously and quickly and solve the problem at the Bintulu Jalan Tun Hussein Ong. Then there is a link road from Jalan CPU crossing over to Bintulu Ratau. When will that be built? And I have asked this several times before, and the last time was in May 2014, a year and a half ago, and I hope that government will quickly budget for this, and it is needed and easier for Kampong folks traveling from this side of the river, of the Kamina River, to the other side, and the general usage by the public to the airport, Tatao, Cebu, etc., especially when more and more houses are being built along the CPU road. And how about the Suai Road from the coastal highway to the Suai Bridge at the Bintulu Miri Road? It's about 20 years now that the government has promised that the road will be built, but up to this day it is still not done. But at least those sections that which have been done, tar seal them as the driving is so bad on the dirt road now. The road is important, that it will help the transport of so many of the folks of the longhouses along this section of the Suai River, and I urge that the government delay no more. And also, pull in the water pipelines to the longhouses there. It is high time that the government provide the basic amenities of our folks there. Do something for our folks there. Suai River is so contaminated now for anybody to use. Moreover, there are crocodiles in the river. So where is the longhouse folks going to get their water supply? We are becoming more and more of a laughing stock by the West Malaysian, if not the world, where we cannot even provide the basic of the road, water and electricity to our roof, to our folks. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the government for the compensation paid to the title land and the properties on them, for those lands which are needed for the construction of the Pana-Borneo Highway from Mile 6 to Mile 30, Jalan Bintulu Miri. But these are only the minority of the people. The majority are those living there without the land title. I'm thankful to the government for the ex gratia payment made to these people, but many has approached me and said that the amount is really too small. This is because of the money which they have received is just not enough for them to get back to live like what they were before. Meaning to say that their lives were very much aggrieved now because of the construction of the road. Now they have to look for quite a large sum of extra money again to be able to live like before. But where are they going to get that much money? Moreover, it will cost them around 10,000 ringgit for the installation of connection of SESCO overhead lines to their new homes when they moved. And the government should compensate for this also. The payment by the government is just too little and not enough. They are very much burdened and worried and don't know how to move. It is therefore urged that there should be another payment be made to them such that they could at least afford to move and live more or less like before without forking out so much more money which they don't have. Then there are those who operate canteen, workshops, business, fish ponds, room rentals, palm oil ramps, and others in this area along the road. Land and Survey and other agencies, complete with the police and soldiers, totaling near 100 of them, came in pickup lorries, trucks armed with chainsaw, crawler, a light shovel on the 27th of October, and demolished quite a few buildings and businesses in this area. But these people have not been paid at all. The enforcement people said that these people do business there, so they do not need to be paid. Mr. Speaker, how could we treat people like that? In fact, we should reward these people for being enterprising to provide services to the people living there, creating economic growth spots. The money they make also, they pay taxes and contribute to the government's coffer. We should encourage people like this and help them instead of punishing them, tearing down their buildings and not paying a cent. They should be compensated. This is not about legal or illegal people living there. They are all our fellow Sarawakians. It is not about whether they have the documents on the land or not, as they could have been easily done by the government any time for all the decades and decades that which they have been staying there and asked for it. This is about people. Our very own people, about children and women whom we as a government is trying to nourish and take care of every day. It's not about documents, it's about the people who are staying there. So I urge the government to look into this on the humanitarian side of the whole issue and then compensate all these people living along the Bintulu Miri Road, mile 6 to 30, be made, and that no demolishing work should be carried out until all this compensation is done. Mr. Speaker, 9 days ago, on the 1st of December, the place which was so disastrously flooded about 2 years ago on the 29th of December 2013, some areas were flooded again, despite so much talked about had been done by certain quarters and some works been done by the government. Now this place is Taman, Beverly Hill, SJK Chiew Chinese, Taman Jade along the Jalan Tun Hussein on. Now this time the rain only ran for about an hour. It's not that long, quite heavily. SJK Chiew was flooded again. At Taman Jade Garden, rainwater rolled down the concrete fence along the concrete river, overflowing onto the road, all to the fear of the folks living there if their houses were going to be flooded again. Now, it is sad to note that despite of all the works that has been done, the drain are seen to be just not enough to cater for the volume of water coming into the drain, starting from UPM and eventually flowing into the Chiew River. Or is it because the cause of the water flow was too zigzagging, even with right 90-degree turns, while the drain, and also the drain was becoming smaller and smaller when it enters into the Chiew River. By right, it should be becoming bigger, but it was smaller. I hope that the authorities concerned will look into this matter seriously and study the whole situation so that the flooding problem in this area will be solved once and for all. The Right Honourable Chief Minister has seen photos of the flood and was aware of the urgency of the matter and has said that the matter should be solved in 7 days. Today, many 7 days has passed, but the threats of the flood, there is never any less. Mr. Speaker, our system of democracy has three parts which provides a check and balance to one another, the legislative, the judiciary, and the executive. We in the legislative and as legislators We passed laws setting the premise for executive and others to do the job, while the judiciary will interpret the law. And this is why that is why it is the executive, the government of the day, to go and get the job done. The Wakil Rakyat may bring up the needs of the people here and there and ask the government to do it. Actually, a good government does not need to be reminded by the Wakil Rakyat to do the daily chores. They could have covered it all. It's all on the routine list. Like, for example, the request to clean up the huge mess of dust and sand on the road, which were just left for months and months, not swept, and it become very dusty, so dirty and unhealthy for all living there. And upon request by the Wakil Rakyat, instead of getting the job done, the Wakil Rakyat got a phone call from the government officer asking him to go to ask the folks using the road there not to make the road dirty. The Wakil Rakyat alleged later it is the executive government of the dead, the ADUN administration, that should do the work for the people. It's the government's responsibility. Or another case like the road bumps on the road at the residential estate, made too high. And upon request by the Wakil Rakyat to the authority to make them lower through a joint signature of the majority of folks there, the authority, when carrying out the lowering of the bumps, the Wakil Rakyat got a call from one of the residents there who did not sign to asking why had he requested the bump to be lowered. Mr. Speaker, there should certainly be some degree of privacy and respect, even ask before releasing the identity of the person making the request or complaint. It should not be reviewed unnecessarily. This will deter people from making a certain request for works which are needed. They would rather not bother them. Maybe no wonder that's why the authority concerned is saying that they are getting less and less complaints these days. There should be minimal requests for this type of works anyway. And I said these are just routine works of the government of the day. Mr. Speaker, I can understand why the bumps on the road can be such an issue. Some too high, some too low, some build their own. Isn't it standard so that the folks in the housing estates would not have to worry about a simple thing like the bump every day? Mr. Speaker, we have been so sold on the idea that one size fits all. And for the past 52 years, we tag along with West Malaysia, while KL dictates it all, except for a few items which are under the control of the state government. Today, KL has become the crown jewel of Malaysia. The lights of the Twin Towers and the KL city glows by night, while Sarawak remains mundane, one of the poorest states in the country. I'm clear that Sarawak does gain advantages in Malaysia, but we are lagging too far behind. I'm also clear that there are some major fundamental issues in the Malaysia Agreement of 1963 which need to be addressed. And as Sarawakians, we all know this, and we are doing the best for Sarawak. Doing best for our Sarawak drives everything we do in this day one. That means asking the difficult questions and sometimes making arguments that people don't want much to hear. When we join Malaysia, we join as equal partners, the three parts, Malaya, Sarawak, Sabah, and that's why last year during our party's convention, which was held in Bintulu, the delegates unanimously passed the 2014 Bintulu Declaration, which aims to restore equal partnership, call on the Barisan National Government to implement the reforms and policies so as to achieve the equal partnerships of the Malaysian Agreement by giving back to Sarawak the autonomy which was spelled out in the agreement. Political leadership means confronting these major fundamental issues, not just wishing them away. For if we ignore, history teaches us that they will only get worse. I know that many, and especially those in Barisan Nasional West Malaysia, are not happy when we bring up the Malaysia Agreement, equal partnership, but I say that what we are asking for is what is needed to fix the problems Sarawak is facing today. And if this autonomy that was spelled out in the Malaysia Agreement will give it back to Sarawak, it will benefit all of us and build a true Malaysia in the spirit of the 1963 Agreement. Mr. Speaker, I've been a member of Parliament for about 5 years and a State Assemblyman for 14 years. For all these years that I have sat in the meetings with all the other elected members, where the Barisan Nasional had always had the overwhelming majority, I've seen the relationships between the members from Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak in the Barisan Nasional. And I have seen where the problem lies. The time has come that Sarawak be accorded back its autonomy, and we have tried the KL way for 52 years and it's not working. Our voices have been ignored. It's time to build ourselves up so that our voices mean something and be respected. I have no doubt that with the political will and political imagination and goodwill and ingenuity that it can be done in the next 50 years, we can see a stronger and a better Malaysia for all, Sabah and Sarawak and Malaya. I'm clear that having autonomy is no guarantee for a better future. What is needed is good governance, a government that is dedicated and hardworking for the people, a government that is people-centric, a government that is inclusive and appreciates the strength in diversity, a just and less corrupt, and a government which truly practices democracy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ali and Muhammad, we will take lunch break and sitting will resume at 2:30 p.m.
2:30.
时间没有假期，20分钟你别讲。
我准备好了，下午咯，到了。
下午一讲。
没有讲。
我在讲。
下午，明天呢？礼拜天你们点？礼拜天10点他们人说没看。你 OK 哈 ？OK。这里讲不的。